He was undefeated in chess tournaments for 8 years straight, and he became the world champ along the way. Today we're gonna enjoy the greatest game of Jose Capablanca playing black here against Pulvermacher, and also he's gonna show us a very simple and yet effective way to handle one of the most aggressive chess openings, the King's Gambit. Here Capablanca is playing bishop c5, and that is already a nice development move, putting the bishop to this active diagonal, but also a little trap that black sets along the way. White cannot here continue with grabbing this pawn, because that is too greedy, and allows black this counter-attack, which finishes the game on the spot. If white doesn't want to move the king, he's going to play g3, but then queen takes e4, counts with this double attack, and black wins the rook. Instead, white developed a knight, adding one more attack to the central pawn of black, and black defends it once again. Still, white cannot grasp this central pawn on e5. If white tries to do it at this point, it fails due to the similar tactics, queen h4 check, and as we know, covering by the pawn loses, and if the king moves forward instead, then it is actually a straightforward checkmate. Back to the actual game, white realized that they're gonna need to do something about this bishop, because otherwise they can't castle. In light of that, they played pawn c3, getting ready to push the other pawn forward in the center and attack the bishop, attack the central pawn. Now, here's the beautiful part about this entire game and all the games of Capablanca. Now, we mortals usually start overcomplicating matters. We start thinking, oh, he's gonna play this one. Should I take this pawn or not? Should I worry about my bishop and white playing d4? Should I bring out this knight or the other knight and whatnot? But Capablanca was very straightforward. He decided some rules, some principles of chess that he decided to follow, and he just did that. So you know that in opening you need to develop pieces, and he asked himself, how can I develop a piece and prevent white from playing d4? And he brought the bishop out to g4, which pins the knight down to the queen and makes it impossible for white to play d4. If white plays this, which he didn't in the game, then, because black can easily eliminate this knight, which guards the central pawn, black can trade off right here and then win the central pawn, and black is doing well. Therefore, white cannot play d4. Instead, white figure out the other thing. They realize that this pin is annoying, they still cannot castle, therefore they need to solve this problem somehow. They traded in the center, and then got their queen out of this pin by playing queen to a4, checking the black king. Now, that also enables white to capture this pawn on e5 right on the next move, because there is no pin anymore. So what do you do about that? Again, we usually start calculating all these complex variations, thinking what to do, and most players, if they notice that there is this pawn hanging, would probably drop the bishop back. Which is not the end of the world, but in general, one of the chess principles state that you gotta move forward and you do not want to retreat pieces back because it makes them less active. Therefore, Capablanca just casually develops a knight. Now, white grabs the central pawn on e5 now. Now white is up a pawn, they're attacking this bishop, they're putting some pressure down here, and notice that the black knight cannot recapture because it's pinned down to the king. So what do you do then? Again, pretty cool thing. A lot of players would most probably notice that this bishop is hanging and would probably move it away somewhere. Maybe some would try to counterattack with queen h4, but in general, in chess, you wish to complete your development before you rush into your attack. So what did Capablanca do here? I'll give you a couple seconds, you can try to think about this. He said, okay, if this bishop is hanging, and in an opening I need to develop pieces, let it be so. And he just developed a knight and guarded this bishop along the way. So it's funny that Capablanca was called a chess machine when chess engines did not yet exist. And as I mentioned earlier, he had this crazy winning streak where, he was undefeated and he won most of the games that he played just by following these seemingly simple chess principles. In this position, white played the correct move pawn to d4, which we're going to see in a moment. But before that, let me show you one really amazing variation, just because it's cool and so that you also know how to play the King's Gambit in general. Right? What if I were to capture this bishop on g4 first? This is a really interesting line, because here, if white goes d4, hitting the bishop, if black just passively retreats the bishop, he's going to end up in a bad position. He's down a pawn, white's got these beautiful pawns in the middle of the board, and he also shuts down this bishop completely. All is just going really well and in white's favor. Therefore, black needs to start utilizing the weaknesses of white's position. And that is the main weakness of the King's Gambit, the fact that the f-file is now open, and the white king is exposed. For example, white captures the bishop, then queen f2 goes inside with a check, the king needs to move, and now at first looks like, okay, black is going to win very quickly, but it's not that simple actually, because knight e3 is not yet a checkmate, white can trade it off by his bishop, and if not, the knight check, then what? This knight cannot move because it's pinned down to the king. by the queen. So what do? Well, the best move for black is to simply castle, just to bring the rook to the open file and to unpin the knight, so that on the next turn something like knight c5 check, which would also hit the queen, would be really strong for black. And if white tries something like queen a7, let's say knight takes c5, indeed, checking the king, white covers. Now knight to e3, in this case it is possible, white can now no longer trade it off because the bishop is pinned. The king needs to move, and now there's a really beautiful finish. Black can sacrifice the queen right here, and finish the game with this rook checkmate. But that is also not the craziest part. The craziest part is in this position there were actually two checkmates in two moves. So one of them is queen to e1, and the task for you is to find the other one. It's black to play, checkmate in 2, and it's not queen to e1. If you can find it, please write it down in comments below. Back to the actual game, white played d4, hitting 2 birds with 1 pawn. White is attacking this bishop and also is solidifying his own knight on e5. Now, what would an average Joe do here? Well, most probably move the bishop away from danger. What did Capablanca play here? Well, he was again very simple and methodical. He was like, okay, in an opening, I'm supposed to develop pieces and castle. And he castled. It turns out that white cannot really win this bishop on c5, because in that case, the knight on e5 will be left undefended. So crazy, simple, but very effective. Really nice. Actually, that move, castling kingside, is the real sacrifice, because in order not to lose this bishop, this knight on e5, white just needs to trade off here first and then grab the bishop. In this case, white is indeed up a piece, because he grabbed this bishop on c5, but the downside is that he's totally undeveloped. So here, all of the pieces are undeveloped, and the queen is attacked, the queen keeps dancing around. For example, if the queen comes back, then now this 2 horsepower is enough for black to drive the game forward, totally destroying the white king shield, and now white cannot take this because of this pin, otherwise black will just keep attacking using his advantage in activity. White was so upset that Capablanca got out of this pin along this diagonal that he decided to immediately replace it with the other pin, this time to the other knight of black. The situation becomes really tense. White is putting pressure down here, now this bishop on g4 is hanging, this bishop on c5 is still attacked, so is this knight on d7. I can't even draw it properly, but something like this. White is really putting a ton of pressure on black. And black decided to just simplify matters, so to say. He traded off on e5 first, white recaptures, and now it looks like black messed up something. At first, you see that the knight is pinned and attacked, therefore it can't run away. Now, it might seem like black just overlooked the fact that something like queen d1 here is not possible. It's not a checkmate because white can simply take it. So that is not an option. And if not, then what can black do? I'll give you a couple of seconds. You can try to find the right move on your own. It's not an easy one, I gotta tell you, but if you find it, that's absolutely phenomenal. So Capablanca realized that his knight is attacked, and also indirectly the queen on d8 is attacked. So how do you handle that? Well, he sacrificed them both with this beautiful knight sacrifice in the middle of the board. Now, the really crazy part is the queen can be captured and the knight can be captured, so it's a double sacrifice in one move. Now, if the knight is captured, that leads to this queen d1 checkmate. This time there is no queen from a4 that can capture the black queen any longer. If I take it back, of course the main line is how about white grabbing the queen? Well, that leads to something similar to Legal's checkmate, bishop f2. As a chess coach, I really admire the style of Capablanca, because just following these simple principles, which are also very effective without overcomplicating matters, without calculating a ton of variations, is something that I, as well as my students, can easily replicate. And that is why if you want to know how to incorporate some of these rules into your own game, check out these 3 masterclass up there, where I break it down for you, and literally this is how I play chess, and I hope that you can learn something from this as well.